Hey guys, Karma Sculpting back again once again, and past me pulled a Mewtwo card, so today, we're making Mewtwo. Yeah, that Pokemon Go TCG set was a nice fun little time waster for me. But, back to today's video, I'm going to start off by making his body. And I'll tell you right now, today's project was so full of mistakes that it's not even funny. So full of mistakes, in fact, that it is broken up into two parts because it took way more than a week to complete, hence why I had to take a week off. And it's Mewtwo, so it's go big or go home. The fun thing about making these Pokemon is it makes me realize how each of them are truly designed. Like, I realized Mewtwo never skips his squats on gym day. It's no wonder he becomes psychic fighting as Mega X. And I may be showing my age here, but did anybody out there in the audience actually get to watch the first Pokemon movie in theaters back in the day? As you'll see much later in the video, I took some heavy inspiration from that. After attaching Mewtwo's feet and baking it in the oven for a little bit to make sure everything stays, I realized I made the tail far too small, so I broke it off and attached a new one. Then it was time to start giving him his chest armor. Wait, armor? Is that the right word for this? And what exactly is Mewtwo based off of? It's weird, I don't normally think of these things too much while I'm making the Pokemon, but while I'm in post watching myself make the Pokemon, I think about this stuff a lot. Like, isn't the lore something like Mewtwo is Mew's DNA mixed with like a human's? I think in like the original Pokemon manga it was something like he was fused with Mew's DNA and Blaine's DNA. That being the case, it was something like they had a telepathic connection, I guess? Sorry if it's obvious to those who remember, I haven't read that in like 10 years. Up next were Mewtwo's arms. And it is very clear that when Mewtwo hits the gym, it's all leg day. If E.T. Fingers over here is lifting a dumbbell, he's more than likely just using psychic powers trying to show off. Quick question for all of you out there actually listening to my voice. Do you like the random facts that I spew about Pokemon, or would you just prefer me to list every single thing that I'm doing? I'm still new to the whole voiceover thing, and I'm here to entertain all of you. If I can do that better in some way, please tell me down below. As I'm sure you all know from the thumbnail, Mewtwo is suspended in a resin tube. So I went with the same pose that he was in when he's in the incubator at the beginning of the first Pokemon movie. You know, arms crossed, feet tucked in, he's just kind of floating there in suspended animation. Not to mention the absorbent amount of tubes attached to this poor guy. Fun fact, at this stage in the clay sculpting process, you could almost swap out Mewtwo's head for a Charmeleon, for example. I was surprised at how similar their head shapes were at this point. Seriously, instead of Mewtwo's aerodynamic head wing things, just put a single horn jutting backward on his head and bam, Charmeleon head. Wait, are these things supposed to be his ears? If so, I kind of always thought he just read everybody's mind. Please tell me I'm not the only person who thought that. Anyway, awkwardness aside, up next was his neck. It's no wonder he needs two of them to hold up his head, since they're both twigs. As a kid, I thought it was weird that he had two necks, but after 20 years of knowing this Pokemon, it's not even weird to me anymore. here I started drilling holes into Mewtwo before I started sticking wires into him to act as the tubing system. At first, I just kind of haphazardly cut out different lengths of wire to see what would work. Luckily, first try was a success, which, as a friendly reminder, was extremely rare in this project. I bent the bottoms of the wires around a bit to give the illusion that they're just kind of floating at the bottom of the tank, but what it did was also give the illusion that it is making Mewtwo float in the middle of the tank while these are actually holding it up. It took quite a bit of finagling and some empty wishes, but this is how it came out. I cut off the tops to an equal length so that they came perfectly to the top of the tank where they wouldn't be seen. And here is where I found some resin crystals that I just had at the bottom of my rock stash. And that's when the project took another turn that I wasn't expecting to make. It just kind of happened. With some creative liberties, I decided to make this a Mewtwo that instead of being born like in the movie, this Mewtwo was actually in an incubator being turned into the Shadow Mewtwo. This was my attempt at trying to make a Mewtwo that could possibly stand out against the myriad of Mewtwos made across the YouTube platform. Just a little something to make mine unique, you know what I mean? That being said, yes, even the paint job had issues. I started off with like a half black coat, half white coat, trying to make it blend as the bottom half of Mewtwo was turning into the Shadow Mewtwo. See, right here, I used the light purple that is used for the rest of Mewtwo's body instead of his tail, which is dark purple. I was not paying attention. Luckily, I find and correct this later before I started doing any of this editing. Because, like I said, you see from the thumbnail at the end of this video, he is encased in resin. If I would not have caught that when I did, I would have cried. That's not even a lie. I would be a grown man on the floor, just like, why? Why did I do that? I tried to make it look as though the shadow part of Mewtwo was slowly creeping up from below, like taking over as it crawled up his body. Yet, in post, all I can think about is the Venom symbiote from the Marvel, comic book, Spider-Man, all that. I don't even know if that makes it cooler, if that makes it kind of a rip-off. I really don't know. What do you guys think? I also added a few splotches here and there, kind of like the water is what's contaminating him, not just the crystals from below. And the instant I decided to do this Shadow Mewtwo thing, I knew I wanted to have this black ooze like creeping up and over his eye, the one that's going to be opening and staring out of the resin. I think it was here while I was painting on the golden part of like the Shadow Mewtwo at the end of his tail, that's where I realized that the tail was not the right color. And here while I was painting the eye, I was so tempted to use some glow-in-the-dark paint on the eyeball to make it really pop when the lights were out. But this project was already so far behind schedule and I couldn't wait for it to be delivered in Amazon. In hindsight, this black marker was a little too thick. It now looks like Mewtwo is rocking some serious eyeliner. And here was another mistake that I found while painting. I didn't realize that Shadow Mewtwo wasn't just straight black. It's like the tail is all black and the rest of him is like really shaded gray, like really, really dark gray. So at that point, I was already going to fix the tail. I was like, let's go ahead and just do it all at once, get it done, and we can finally move on with the project. I crammed him inside of a plastic tube, dropped down the shadow crystals, and drowned him in resin. I made several cups of progressively less yellow resin, trying to give the illusion that the shadow crystals were tainting the water, but it didn't really come out all that thick in the end. And if you're wondering why I'm pouring so quickly, 1, the video is sped up, and 2, I wanted some bubbles in there, because if you remember in the first movie, there are like bubbles bubbling up from below. Once the resin was already set for the most part, I went ahead and stuck some of these lights on top and stuck them in place with UV resin. At the end of the project that you'll see in the next week's video, you will see how all of this is hidden away so that it isn't an ugly eyesore. For the final details of this part of the video, I went through with a scalpel and carved into the side of the resin to give it the impression that it is cracked, like Mewtwo is awake and he is about to get out. And oop, my hand slipped, creating more cracks than I wanted to make. Yay. I kept the majority of the cracks centralized around the side where his eye is opening, like, hey, this is the side where all the power just amassed. Then, to give the illusion that the insides, the water, the fluid, whatever it is leaking out, I dripped some UV resin on around the cracks to give it the impression that it's about to burst. And with that, the first half of this Mewtwo two-parter video is finally done. The entirety of the next part is building the incubator around Mewtwo with, the whole Team Rocket setup. It's definitely not what was in the movie. I took my own flair with it, so I hope you're looking forward to that. If anybody remembers from the video just prior to this one, I said I wanted to use some technology like some lights, some glow-in-the-dark paints, and I got to do exactly that with this project. I'm just sad I couldn't get it all out in 1 week. But now that we're at the end of the video, those who are still watching, how'd it turn out? Despite all the hassles that this project put me through, I can say I still had fun. And that's all that matters, right? And seeing as this video has dragged on long enough, I'm gonna stop rambling, I'm gonna get off here, and you guys can just enjoy watching Mewtwo spin around in circles for the rest of the time. Karma Sculpting and Mewtwo will see you next week on Wednesday.